Hi guys, me again. I want to respond to this comment I got off YouTube. I get some great / crackers comments. So the Buddha never talked about supernatural gods. Deva was a human and direct transaction to English, translation maybe, as gods would misrepresent the real meaning. People lived in present-day Sri Lanka who were called devas, similar to the Yakshas and the Nagas. First, I recommend that you study the history of Sri Lanka, where the Buddha was born and lived, and learn before you talk about it. So they always have recommendations, these people, and I don't want to get into credentialism, but I have a PhD in Indian philosophy. I read Sanskrit, I read Pali, I also read a bit of Tibetan. My Gandhari is okay. I read Italian, French, Spanish, a bit of Portuguese. Anyway, oh yeah, and I've got a PGCE in religion from Oxford. So this isn't a brag. This is, I have expertise. So telling me to go away and learn when I've said something that you disagree with doesn't cut it. Now, let's get to the substance of the point. So the Buddha, born and lived in Sri Lanka. No, he wasn't. No, he didn't. He was born in Greater Magadha, probably what we would now call Nepal. There's a bit of controversy over that. It doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things, but he wasn't born in Sri Lanka. Did he visit Sri Lanka? No, we have no evidence for it. It appears in the Mahavamsa, which is the Sinhalese chronicle that's in the Pali Canon, and he visits 3 times. It's a mythical thing, but there's no archaeological evidence, there's no contemporaneous evidence, there's no evidence except what's written in the Mahavamsa, which is largely hagiographical, and we have no reason to assume it to be true. Okay? So he didn't live there, he wasn't born there, he didn't teach there. All right, we've established that. This is what the evidence says. This is current scholarly consensus. I'm not just making it up off the top of my head, even though people routinely accuse me of this. All right, now, the Buddha never talked about supernatural gods, except he did. And yeah, it's true that there were ancient tribes in Sri Lanka called the Deva and the Naga, and that these names married up with cosmological names for godly entities in the Indian traditions. And this is largely, we think, a totemic representation. So people called Naga might have meant people whose symbol is the serpent, the Yaksha, the forest clan with a guardian spirit. Deva might mean noble clan, prestigious title, yeah, likening these people to the gods. That part is true. Did the Buddha talk about them? He talked about them in one place, the Mahavamsa. So you've got a closed loop here with the Mahavamsa. The Buddha talks to Devas, Nagas, Yakshas in these terms, human terms, only in the Mahavamsa and the Pali Chronicles of Sri Lanka. When we go back to the Indian traditions, 100% of the time references to Devas, Yakshas, Nagas are referring to mythological celestial beings. 100% of the time. So, did the Buddha talk about gods, and is it a bad translation? Well, no, it's not a bad translation, and I've had this a few times. I had one really productive conversation with a guy last week, so thank you for that. A couple of other people just get a bee in the bonnet because they think that God equals Christian God or Jewish God or Muslim God. No. Well, the history of the word God is tied to the Proto-Indo-European devas, which is the same place that we get the Greek Zeus from. It's where we get deity from. It's where we get deus from. It's also where we get lots of Slavic words, Norse words, and indeed the English God from. And all these things mean is luminous celestial entity. Okay, so a glowing sky daddy of some description, sky daddies, plural, because the idea of gods predates the idea of Christian God. So it wasn't always monotheistic. Gods were just celestial entities. Does anybody think that the Roman gods aren't gods and it's a bad translation? No, because they mean the same thing. The word shares a root, they mean the same thing. Our understandings have been adapted according to our own needs over the years. So the Buddha did talk about supernatural gods in tons and tons of places. I'll give you a few. I'm going to look at the screen for this, I apologise. So, Anguttara Nikaya 4.36, Majjhima Nikaya 49, and then we've got things like what I think is the Samyutta Nikaya, where all this stuff is mentioned too. Yeah, There's loads of places. I will put them in the links where it's fucking obvious when you look at this stuff that the Buddha isn't talking about normal people. He's talking about celestial entities, powerful creator gods, all right, who think themselves better than they are, but are still trapped in the cycle of birth, life, rebirth. You know, they're still subject to karma, they're not liberated. And in this sense, he's superior to them. But yeah, I wanted to respond to this point. So perhaps when you recommend that I go away and read something or learn something, make sure that you've done the same.